Good evening. We start here tonight. Disgraced former Steinhoff International CEO Markus Jooste, who is accused of fraud in Germany, is now in hot water with German authorities. This is after he reportedly failed to present himself to a German court which is prosecuting the spectacular collapse of the company. According to Bloomberg, Jooste's lawyer told the German court today that his clients could not travel to Germany because he handed over his passport to South African authorities. We're joined now by James-Brent Stayn, the author of Steinhoff Inside South Africa's biggest corporate crash, for his insights into the latest on Steinhoff and Markus Jooste. James, thank you very much for your time. We know that it was the German media that actually raised the red flags months before the Steinhoff crash, and now there is a fraud case there against Markus Jooste. What do we know about this case that is taking place, or that is supposed to have started today?
Hi, good evening, also to your viewers. Well, it's the first time that there's a criminal case against Mr. Jooste, which is a very good development. 5.5 years after Steinhoff crashed and wiped out about 200 billion rands worth of value, shareholder value. Unfortunately in Germany, not in South Africa, where the progress is glacial. But, I don't think he was ever going to be in Germany. I doubt if we'd see him go there unless an extradition process should be started. And we know how those have been going lately. If you just look at the Gupta. So whether he'll actually appear in court remains to be seen. Even if he did appear in court today, the worst that could have happened, I understand, is a fine. He's one of his co-accused today, I think, paid a fine of 600,000 rand. That's about 30,000 euros, if my math is correct. So it's peanuts in the greater scheme of things, and then the matter is behind you. Alternatively, a 3-year prison term. So, the worst that could happen to Markus Jooste, even if he goes to Germany and appears in court, is not really massive in the greater scheme of things.
James, it doesn't seem that Jooste is going to go to Germany, particularly before he actually faces trial here at home. You've spoken briefly about his troubles here at home. How do you see the movement on Markus Jooste by the authorities in South Africa, seeing that many of his assets were actually taken by the state through the Reserve Bank? You've said it's been 5 years, we haven't seen anything. The snail's pace of this particular case, it doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Is it a surprise to you that this court case, a civil matter like this, is taking this long?
No, it's no surprise. White-collar corporate crime, commercial crimes of this nature, it happens more regularly than you think, but I am not aware of a high-level person behind bars today. And we're talking about lots of things happening. Tongaat, we're talking about units, we're talking about SAA. It's not only in the private sector, don't forget, we're talking about the state sector as well. And maybe there's something there to be investigated or looked at. If what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you disempower the state functions that are meant to investigate these highly complex crimes, if you disembowel the police's commercial crimes unit, if you ensure they don't have the capacity they need, the IT specialists, the auditing specialists that they need, then the private sector fraudsters are going to get away with it. Of course they are. But the public sector fraudsters are going to get away with it too. And frankly, the capacity in the state is woefully inadequate. I think that is just another failure of our justice system. I think that the slowness of this whole thing is just disgraceful, but it's completely to be expected, I'm afraid.
And it's something that is quite strange because the state itself does admit that its capacity when it comes to investigating such matters is quite limited. James, let's go back a little bit to the German media that was first, to raise those red flags a couple of years ago, just months before the collapse of Steinhoff. A lot of people were questioning the media in Germany that actually wrote raising red flags. What did they actually see? And in terms of Steinhoff International as a big player, how big were they in Germany?
Well, they were big globally. They were one of the biggest companies in South Africa. They were headquartered in Stellenbosch, but in 2015 they moved their registration of their business to the Netherlands. So in reality, it's a Dutch-registered company, Steinhoff, although it had its roots in Germany. So it's a conglomerate, international conglomerate, listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in Germany as well in 2015. So very strong German roots. In September 2017, it was a German magazine that first wrote an article about a raid on some Steinhoff offices in Westerstede, I think was the town, if I have it correct. And it had to do with, I think it was a tax matter, and then some questions were raised, and that sort of raised the first eyebrows. But, there were always, I suppose, some red flags, but people chose to look past them, I think, and of course hindsight is a perfect science, but people looked past the red flags because the share was doing so well. If you look at Steinhoff's numbers, in the 5 years before the crash, their profits they were showing record profits. Profits had gone up in the 5-year period, if I remember correctly, by 500%. So the share price was going through the roof. Everybody wanted to get into Steinhoff, so you had many investors piling in. And while things are going well, you don't want to rock the boat. So people simply ignored some of the warning signs. One of the main ones was it was, very hard to really explain what Steinhoff's business was. It was very complex, and people, normally that's a warning sign. But these clever people tended to look away because the share was doing so well, and Jooste was absolutely brilliant, and of course surrounded by a team of brilliant people. And on the Steinhoff board, you had 3 members with doctorates in accounting, 3 doctorates on the auditing committee, and none of them allegedly saw any of the wrongdoing. So there's lots of elements to the story which is fascinating. Another one, if you don't mind me going into, is the role of the auditors. So, we've got to ask more questions about auditors globally, in South Africa, most definitely. The auditors at Steinhoff was Deloitte, and they gave Steinhoff a clean bill of health for years. So investors look at the audit reports, they look at who sits on the board, they look at the CEO, and if things are going well, I think that if there's some warnings, they look past them. You look at the JSE today, about 94% of all companies are audited by four companies, for the big 4. That's a massive concern in my view. And so you've got IRBA, the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors, another institution meant to check that they're doing their work adequately and properly. And you've got to ask questions about their ability to monitor these auditors. We've had these auditors, all of them involved in some way with some scandals. PwC was involved in SAA for a long time. Inkonki was another one. So there's a lot of questions that still needs to be asked, but without the real, and I do think it's political will, without the real political will to drive real change, I don't think we can expect any real change anytime soon.
James, now we are hearing that the German authorities have issued an arrest warrant, or have applied for an arrest warrant for Markus Jooste. I don't believe that there is going to be any movement from the South African side. But what is your view on that when it comes to the arrest warrant that has been issued, judging from what you know about the extraditions that recently that we've had, including that of the Gupta brothers?
I think you've answered your own question. I'm not an expert on German law. But I would suspect that if you don't show up in court at a normal matter of process that follows is that an arrest warrant is issued. It's similar things happen locally. So I think it's just a matter of process. If there's a follow-through, that remains to be seen. I doubt that would happen. You've mentioned yourself, our country hasn't covered itself in glory when it comes to extradition matters, except if you're a famous guy called Thabo Bester, apparently. Then you get a private jet, flying you back. But no, I'm not expecting anything of significance soon.
James Stayn Bryant is the author of Steinhoff, the book Steinhoff, South Africa's biggest corporate crash, and he is not confident that there will be any movement at all when it comes to the prosecution of Markus Jooste in Germany, or that there will be anything significant when it comes to the charges or that fine that he might actually eventually face, or a 3-year sentence that he could eventually face due to his troubles back here at home. James, thank you very much for your time.